Hello, welcome to Black Crow Gaming, and here we are, Arron and Toby, which is really weird because we haven't done just an Arron and Toby show for quite some time.
Yeah, how long has it been? It must have been like a good few months.
I mean, yeah, it feels like ages, and it's actually probably a really good time to do it because we're having a little bit of a soft relaunch of the brand, aren't we, Toby? So we might as well pull the band-aid off, and everyone's going to be wondering, well, what's going on with the thumbnail? So we we went to Oxford last weekend, and Oxford was excellent. I'm getting feedback. Toby, move your phone.
Sorry, how's that? That was my fault for a second because I turned on our stream on my laptop so I can watch chat and be in chat. So my apologies for that.
Oh, fuck's sake, Toby! Thanks for ruining it. Anyway, we were at Oxford at the weekend, which was fantastic. But we met some wonderful people, absolutely amazing people, and we actually got some amazing feedback. Good feedback. We got good advice, and then that has just kind of led to this massive change in the way we're doing things. So you'll notice that we've changed our thumbnails so that they're a little bit clearer. There's less going on. We realised that on our thumbnails we didn't need to have who sponsored us. We didn't need to have all these wacky images because ultimately when people click on it, they just want to see what we're doing. What we're doing is a podcast and insert title what we're going to be talking about. And tonight we are going to be talking about the Oxford GT and the latest, I hate saying it, the Munitorum. It's just really difficult. Basically, the
Munitorum field manual.
The friggin' points increase, people. The points increase or decreases depending on how lucky you were, or how unlucky you were, or just how flat butt fucked you were. Anyway, Toby's doing his dance because he knows he wasn't that badly damaged. Anyway,
I went down 10 points. I'm happy as Larry.
Right. So we're going to get into kind of the Oxford GT, and for myself and Toby and a lot of our friends that came and joined us, it was the best event we've been to since being involved in Warhammer for me.
Yes.
It was incredible, and there's two reasons why it was so good. The first reason, and it's a little bit of a soppy moment for me and Toby, was the team. So we've got two photos because the picture we got cuts off one of our friends, but we'll show you the next one. So there's a group of us there. We managed to take quite a big team with us, and then the next photo we got him just there, and we all went, and we had a mixture of results. Toby doing really well, getting his 4-1. We had multiple 3-2s, 2-3s, 1-4s. But for a lot of these guys, some of these guys, it was their first like big major event, and it's intimidating. And some people might not realise just how intimidating an event is. So I thought I'd include a photo that just highlights just how crazy the Oxford GT was. It was 253 people. And that is what 253 people playing Warhammer looks like. So if that's your first event, it's going to be just wild. If you've not done like a big event like this before, just winning a game in all that noise and craziness is just, you just got a big round of applause for guys coming and making that this is like one of their first events. And me and Toby, we're like super proud of the team. We're super proud of what everybody achieved. And this is one of the reasons why this was one of the best events, because we got to take loads of our mates and just have a great time. The other reason why it was so good was because the people that were there were me and Toby and co along the way, and they made us feel amazing. And here's one photo from the big man himself. Here's Chris donning the Black Crow game, and you normally see him repping Vanguard Tactics, but recently he's been kind of helping out with the Black Crow side of things, and he decided he would rep Black Crow that weekend, doing really well, even playing me in round 2 and getting his ass handed to him. But
worst matchup for his army.
Yeah. But we had a great weekend, and he was there loving it with us, and that was another one of the reasons why it's so good. We also had the pleasure of finally hanging out with Jake. We've spoken to Jake from Vanguard Tactics a lot, and he was there, and that was just fantastic. And there's another photo of us all hanging out. Toby unfortunately wasn't around for this when we took this photo, but Jake is looking handsome
where I was.
as ever, and Corbin was his proxy. Look at that.
If in doubt, we're interchangeable. You can just we both play Marines, we both play heavy tank lists.
Yeah.
Sorted.
Our resident Chumbawamba was there to join us.
I can't even remember how he became a Chumbawamba, but he is a Chumbawamba.
This is another thing about when you go on like long car journeys. The conversations in those cars are wild, and Toby's
Please tell me you've got a photo of a monk jack.
I don't have a photo of a monk jack. We're not going to go into that. And then finally, another special reason, and one of the reasons why we got to sit down at length with this man, Mr. Stephen Box, and he sat down with me, and he spent quite a lot of time with our team, and we just kind of talked about like the channel and developing the channel, and he has agreed at some point he will be coming on the channel with us, and we got him a little bit of a joke. Toby bought him a Best Teacher Toblerone, but bottled it, giving it to him. So me being the person I am, just went and gave it to him. But actually, at that weekend was just fantastic. It wasn't just for the fact that we were like hanging out with these really great people. It was the fact that we were just everybody was just all about the team, and it was a really special weekend. So one thing I can say from both me and Toby agree: if you're gonna go to an event, get a bunch of your pals, go to an event, or if you don't have a bunch of pals to go with, come join Black Crow Gaming. Join us in the Discord below. Ask if you could be a part of the team, and then you could be joining us at these UKTC events where we have 10, 15, 30 odd people rocking up, and that's a community you just get to be a part of. Just an extended family, which is essentially what we've all become.
Yeah, and I think another thing with the UKTC is you also, after you go to a couple, you start seeing people that you've played before. So like one of my favorite things about the ones that we've been to is that I know that I'm always going to see the Warwickshire gamers when they go as well, because they're sort of similar distances for them to the tournaments that we go to, and they're a fantastic group of guys. I played two of them, lost to one of them and beat one of them, and you just know as soon as you walk up to the table and you see the team shirt, you're like, yeah, this is going to be an awesome game. It's going to be competitive. It's going to be close. But most importantly, it's going to be really good fun. So that's a really nice aspect of UKTC as well.
And I think that's a really special part of going to these events. And this is why we encourage our guys in our team to come along, come be a part of it. So let's get in to the review. Now, we're not going to sit here and talk about our games, because some channels out there already do that, and it's just freaking boring just listening to yourself say about how you did this or you did that. It doesn't really get you as viewers immersed in it. It's really difficult to watch. So what we've done is we're going to do exactly what we did for Peterborough Slam, and we are going to get up the mission pack. Boom. This is the UKTC mission pack. Now, it has had a bit of a live update. We can't affect that, but we can talk about what round 2 was.
Yeah.
So, we're not going to talk about what me and Toby did in this round. We're literally going to talk about the terrain, the map, and we're just going to say, was it good, was it bad, etc. So, mission round 1 was priority targets and chilling rain. Toby, take us through it.
So obviously priority targets is a tough one, because you always want to go second. So it's a little bit of a get the roughest one out the way first. I think would be the best way to say it, because Dawn of War is tough deployment in terms of hiding. It feels quite open. So you've got to approach it going, okay, how much can I actually hide? How much am I going to need to reserve? And then it's so important to make that decision turn 1, in terms of if you're going first, you go super aggressive, and you take that center board, you prep yourself for staging, and then just swarm your opponent in the deployment zone on turn 2. or if you play super cagey because you've gone second. Now, I will say I thought on this map I could reserve quite a lot and that would be okay. I was against Sisters. It was Vic, but, someone's got to get him round one, right? And he was able to really efficiently screen me. I think against other lists, I'd stand by that tactic. Not everyone has 30 Arco-Flagellants that are running straight at you. So have a good think about your reserves. But I would say the major thing that cost me in this game was reserving too much.
I think it's important to note, so the matchup on a Dawn of War with the terrain like this, so you can see from the map, there are two really clear, prominent firing lines. And I think what this map doesn't do very well is it doesn't show you necessarily the scale of the size of the terrain. So the terrain actually is bigger on the board than this map may make it look, right? But when you go onto a Dawn of War, those firing lines, there was very little you were hiding along those, except so on the right hand side, or you can see this very large box. Yes, you could stage an awful lot into there and then move up and position yourself behind that wall onto that far objective. That would then help you and screen you from what was coming down those firing lines. However, this is where it all changed. All that opponent needs to do is move down. and then you're all of a sudden in the open. So what you got to hope for, especially as like a combat player, you need to take a turn of pain, and then your second turn needs to be the turn that you go in and you absolutely lay the law. This was a shooting army gallery or an army that could screen and trade. If you can screen the board, you're loving life. Because ultimately you're still going to have loads of stuff that's got a lot of firepower, but you're able to cover that board edge. You're able to cover the whole board, and it makes it really challenging. So, like Toby said, get the worst one out of the way. So we fought. So this is where there's been a slight change in the pack, and the second mission was supply drop. Toby, take it away.
Yeah, so supply drop on Search and Destroy, which, yes, people would argue 1 and 2 are probably, of the rounds, I wouldn't say there's a weak round, but of the rounds, they are probably the weaker rounds that you don't necessarily want to be playing as much. So Search and Destroy, obviously it's fantastic for combat armies. It's the deployment that they want to be playing on. However, you don't score anything for your home objective during supply drop, and you're only scoring for no man's land. And then a lot of the time it is, again, like priority targets, decided on who goes second because they're scoring at the end of the game and because they can just flood that final objective with a lot of OC. I would say the exception of this, and you could see this in the scores, because if both players were able to play the mission, they were very low scoring. It was sort of like 75 to 50, 75 to 40. I think there was even some 60-30s, that kind of thing. Or people just got tabled because they got rushed by a combat army because it's Search and Destroy and you can't come out to the center against a combat army because they'll just body you. So it was either very lopsided or very, very close and very low scoring. So in terms of prepping for this, I was against orcs, so I had to be like, okay, how is he going to rush me? And I kind of had to try and screen off and play cagey for the first couple of turns, and then aim to score late when I'd picked up, most of his units after the war, everything like that, see where I could trade efficiently. It was tough, to be honest. Orc damage output was no joke, especially in that war turn. Knobs are just so like when they're strength 10 and all these attacks. Outside the war turn, you'll pick them up easy, but in the war turn, they're absolutely terrifying. So I hope you go second, and hope you don't play a combat army.
So this is again a funny map, because the first map very much favours a shooting based army, and the second map very much favoured the combat army. So it's almost kind of like trying to be like, look, we're sorry guys, if you play combat armies in the first round and you've just got your ass handed to you by a really heavy shooting army. Here's your gift. Here's the second map, which is a gift for combat armies. It is very, very combat oriented because you can see there's lots of places you can stage, and you can stage onto those objectives. And what's important for combat armies, if you're learning a combat army, staging is your best friend, because you're not thinking about moving or advancing onto an objective. You're thinking about moving and then charging onto an objective. Because being a combat player, every turn you have the potential of an 18-inch move. Every single turn, if there is something for you to charge, there is a chance, a slim chance, but a chance that you could just get good and roll sixes, bro. And then you'll come out like our friend Manny, and you'll roll a double six, and you've done a 12-inch charge, and the next thing you know, you've just covered 18 inches on the board.
Yeah, and I think it's so easy on this mission with those small elves in the center to just stage a transport right behind them, and then get out on the other side of the wall onto the objective.
Yeah.
So it's so good to be able to just do that, hold that center, dominate those key sectors of the board, and because your opponent is forced to come out the deployment zone, forced to come out and play, it can be really difficult, especially if you're one of those combat armies like World Eaters that does a lot of damage early, where they might then not have the rest of like the longevity the late game to score. Obviously, that goes both ways. The one-shot combat armies like Orcs, like World Eaters, will struggle in that later game to have the resources to score 15 on supply drop in the last turn. But in the same vein, I think Search and Destroy just really hands it over to the combat players and goes, okay, what can you do with the 3 turns you're probably going to get of dominance?
It's also worth noting, like at Oxford, there was some really skewed scores, and there was a lot of complaints about that actually, because a lot of people who would have scored high didn't score that high on this map. And it's also worth noting. So I don't know if we made this clear. These maps you're seeing on the screen right now, and the approach that we're going to take to them, because the next time it's taken hold, this isn't going to change. This is what you're facing at current UKTC tournaments. So we are giving you a general insight into how shooting army, combat army, tech armies, whatever, can potentially wield these maps. Now, we're not saying that we're the best players in the world. However, we know the game well enough that we can do well at events, and if you're a beginner and you're coming to this and you've got a cool combat army, this is a map that you should be able to go into and be like, right, I know I can stage and get onto almost every objective quite comfortably.
Yeah, and I think it's a really fine balance for the shooting armies, because you do have to play cagely, and I think we've just gained a bit of advantage by the fact that it's now taken hold. We can score that primary by holding our home objective. And those 2 corner objectives are actually quite nice to fight over. So personally, what I would do now that this is taken hold is that I would actually focus on my home objective and the 2 corners. Because I play quite a lot of infiltrate, and I would have the center sort of soak up where my opponent's going to send most of their stuff, bog them down in there. But then if they're in that narrow approach that we can see going down the center from big L to big L. Sorry, I think I'm slightly reversed on to how I'm trying to show myself, but on the camera. But if we go big L corner to big L corner, sure, they can have that. They can score their 10 points every turn. However, if I'm playing it efficiently, I'm scoring at least 10, probably 15 each turn. So you do have to be cagey as a shooting army on this map. You have to be cagey as a shooting army on any search and destroy deployment. But take and hold helps us a bit.
Yeah, and I think that's the big change. Right, moving on to the third mission.
Yes.
Purge the foe, sweep and clear. This was an interesting mission actually, because the way the deployment works is you've got a big old gap in the middle, and there's not a lot of places to hide in that
Yeah,
mid-table. Not really, because there's a big old open space here. So a big old open space. There's two big firing lines go right down the middle of that for where you're going to be pointing your army to go to. So to be able to get to any of those, to get to some of the objectives, you're in the big open, and it's a problem. But then if you face an indirect army, or an army that doesn't need to see you to shoot you, then you're in major danger on this map, because you can't come out safely without you being a target, because the space in between cover from each one to each one is quite large.
yeah. So I've played guard on this map before, and it's one of those ones where you kind of have to just go, okay, I'm going to commit. I'm going to have to play for the center, and I'm going to go, right, come and get me. And with that aggression, you pin them back. So if you are against indirect and you are on purge, to be fair, I think against indirect you have to be somewhat aggressive anyway, because otherwise they are just going to choose a small unit and pick it up each turn. I actually love this map, and I really like this mission. It's probably my favorite of the day, and that is because there is so much cover in the center of your deployment zone, but there's really good firing lines out of it. So you can really nicely just find those angles that you're going to need to shoot into the deployment zone, to shoot into certain other spots that they might want you to not. But the biggest thing for me is the L that you have, the medium L that you have outside of your deployment zone is your best friend. You get behind that and you just dominate that side of the board, gives you good firing lines to the center, but they've got quite a long distance to come round to it. The one thing to bear in mind with that, though, is you do need to be careful how much OC you're putting onto that objective, because some of it is poking out on the other side. You can have it stolen. It is only hold one, hold more in Purge, so it matters less. But when we come on to Scorched in the next one, it does matter a heck of a lot more. So just bear that in mind, that there is that space there. But yeah, this is one of my favorite missions. As a shooting army, you can play super cagey, super passive, and still hold quite a few objectives. And on Purge, you want to be playing passive because you don't want to be overexposing yourself and giving away too many units. You want to, throw one unit into the meat grinder in exchange for two. That kind of tighter mission play. Obviously, I had Drukhari, which does make life a heck of a lot easier. Drukhari on Purge is rough for Drukhari, full stop. Any MSU army is going to struggle on Purge, especially against a heavy shooting Marine army or heavy shooting army.
Yeah. Anything that's got a gun is gonna enjoy this one.
Yeah.
I found obviously. I'm picking up Necrons from a hyper. If I'm playing Hypercrypt right now, and I'm wielding the Hypercrypt tool, I'm sitting there thinking, cool. I've got a very different non-monolith build. Anyway, I think cool. I can trade here and hold objectives in the center with trade units. I can stage and stay on the objective with the medium L comfortably, and I can probably stack units there, and then coming from that large L, I can move around and have epic firing lines coming up, even getting to a point where you can get an angle on the other team's home objective. Now, the reason this is great for Necrons is, especially at the minute, especially Hypercrypt, is because they're just super easy to move around. If I want to bring 3 units off and then just come off from the side, that side deployment is actually massive, and it peaks out. You can see at that bottom corner that'll go straight into the home deployment. So for Hypercrypt Necrons, this was like chef's kiss, because they could get around that board, and just you could position key units which you knew would do a lot of damage, and you can really cripple an army very quickly from one turn. As we keep calling them, the go turn, the war turn. There's a point where in Warhammer, especially 10th edition at the minute, where you can position yourself into a point where you can literally break the back of your opponent very quickly and take away key resources. And this map, I think, positions certain armies in a really good position to be able to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think this one is really nice for so many different armies for so many different reasons, which is great. What I would say is that it's worth bearing in mind that you need to plan for this kind of thing. So you need to think about your 12-inch deep strike deniers. You need to think about your lone ops, because as Aaron said, you might end up with someone having a fire line into your home objective. When we come to the next mission, I'll discuss how I did end up doing that. So it's really important to think about what's holding objectives, what's stopping your opponent deep striking in your backside, and what you can do to kind of then push that to your opponent and to use the terrain to your advantage. I think it's, Dom put it really well when he was discussing how he builds his list. You should always look at the terrain pack first and go, okay, what's exploitable on this and how can I be exploited in return?
I think certain armies are able to do that a lot easier. Let's move on to Scorched, especially armies that have got a balance between good shooting and good combat. They can
100%.
They can exploit it really well. So let's move on to round 4, Scorched Earth.
I got deja vu.
And this was a 6 objective map. Now, this is obviously going to still be relevant at UKTC. So hidden supplies, what that means, folks, is basically you get an extra objective. So there's 4 objectives in the middle. And Scorched Earth, if you don't know, basically you gain 5 points for raising one of these objectives from turn 2 up to the drop end of turn 4, or beginning of turn 5, if you burned in turn 4.
Yeah.
You can't burn in the first round. So,
or the last.
So what's important to note here is it's the same deployment we just looked at a minute ago, but the way the scenery has been placed is slightly different, and it gives you this idea that it makes you feel like you're safe. But actually, from where that medium L is in the middle there, going towards the small L, that gap there, if you position something on that line, you can see straight up the middle, all the way to the other end. And that is one hell of a firing line when you need to put something big and tasty to scare people off those center 2 objectives.
Yeah, I mean, I think when looking at this one, obviously you see that this time you can have a unit hold the objective from behind the building, from behind that center, but you can kind of see how small that space is. So you are never getting much OC on there unless you're like towing a vehicle on. And then if you're towing a vehicle on, you're exposing yourself heavily to something popping out of that big L and just nailing you. So there's a lot of play in this one. I've done this mission twice. I lost it the first time I did it against Tau, and then I won it in Oxford. I think the difference is how well you can sort of try and bait your opponent to come forward and try and hit your objective with the L on, the big L, and the medium L, and then how you might be able to do that back to your opponent. Because if you can do it back to your opponent, it's a huge swing, and if you can stop them doing it to you, even better. So things like infiltrate and scout are really good on this map.
Yeah, they're really strong. This whole map in itself is a tough one for combat armies, because typically you need a lot of bodies to secure an objective with combat, because you're not going to be really giving much shooting. So you need to be able to hold that. But it's really easy for shooting armies to put cheap, high OC units they don't care about on an objective to die, to quickly steal an objective from you, or stop you raising an objective. And that's like really easy for units to do that. So it's difficult for a combat army on here. However, it's not impossible. Like Toby said, there's 2 really good places for you to hide, and if you're really super aggressive, you just kind of use that terrain and just push and try and pen the opponent in the home. But it depends on
like the easiest way as a shooting army to kind of handle this is to have a heavy hitting unit sit behind both of the medium L's. So the one in my deployment zone and the one in no man's land for me, because they can really easily rotate in terms of where they need to be seen, where they need to be shooting, and if they can usually pick up the threat that they're picking up, unless your opponent's double stacked, then they're not getting much return fire back because your opponent just can't move all the way around to try and scoot round to then shoot you. So I was against Marines. I was against another really shooty Marines list on this. But he ended up really struggling to where he could get his lines. Tanks struggle on this deployment, particularly larger tanks, so like Land Raiders, are super predictable.
You just can't get through most of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly. You've got to start in the open in front of your big L, or you've got to start up on the other flank going towards the medium L and no man's land, which is the better thing to do. Absolutely the best thing to do is that. But it's super predictable.
If, by the way, you come to a tournament and your opponent has brought a large model, before you start that game, have the conversation with them. FYI, there is only a 5-inch gap between each of these pieces. You cannot fit your model through these areas. And if that person's like, oh, I didn't realise that, then you avoid the gotcha. But 9 times out of 10, somebody would have looked at the map and realised that, okay, that's fine. I accept that I'm only going to be in my home deployment the entire game. However, that is a conversation, if you're new to tournaments, that you must have with your opponent, is about what can fit through where, because that can become a really awkward conversation.
Yeah, because if someone deploys a Land Raider, say, in their big L, with the plan to go up that flank, it doesn't fit. If they go behind the big L, between the wall and the side of the board, it's 5 inches. It does not fit. And then it has to go all the way back around up to the medium L on the other side of the board before it can get out of your deployment zone. And that would be a super bad, feels bad. But just having that conversation early, establishes that you're happy to chat about these things to make sure that it's all completely fair. But also just makes it a little bit easier of like, you don't have to have that conversation in a slightly more awkward context of, no, you can't do that. You can just go, cool, let's agree what is possible now, so that when we're having to actually think about the game and where knowing more might advantage someone from where they can move, that takes that out of the equation. So that's really important.
Feels bad is something that's really important to try and manage. And we, our friends, yesterday we dropped a video about etiquette, and that's something that's really covered really well in that video. And if you haven't seen that video, it's just 20 minutes long. Go watch that How to Play series and etiquette at a tournament table. Something that a lot of people actually struggle with, and I think watching that 20-minute video might give you an idea of just how to maybe approach your games. So
yeah, I just on that point, I do just really want to go that at UKTC I've never had a problem in terms of chatting about what you can do, what you can't do, everything like that. All of my opponents have been fantastic at we've had really open lines of conversation, just nail it down and get it clear. At a local level, I've had problems at times. But I think when you get up to the players that are at UKTC, they know the score at that point. They know what they're doing, and it's not the pokey local where someone who might be a little less savoury might try and game you a little bit more. So as much as there is a little bit of making sure your etiquette is right, I have never experienced a problem at a UKTC tournament.
Yeah, and I don't think it's anything to really worry about. So we're going to move on to the final mission, which is taking hold. It's another six objective mission. Now, ultimately, this is like a bread and butter mission. You know, like it's nothing shocking about taking hold. I
There's
don't.
6 objectives, Aaron. That is
Yeah,
shocking.
yeah, six
6
objectives.
objectives on taking hold. You can technically score 100.
Yes, you can. You could. It's not that it's not that unusual because if you played Warhammer ninth, 8th, 7th, having six objectives and hold 1, hold 2, hold 3 was the norm. That was like a normal mission, Toby. You look all scared, like, oh my god, I've never.
Long time ago. I'm not a grandpa, mate. I
Yeah,
don't know
well,
these kinds
so
of
this
things.
is people who have played this. This isn't unfamiliar to kind of what your general life would have been. So 6 objectives, a bunch of terrain with 4 really open objectives, and then 2 objectives completely covered by the large L. I found this map super weird. I came to it and I was like, this is a weird map, and I would like shooty armies again. This was quite a nice map for them because you could quite comfortably keep them off 1, 2, 3 objectives just through shooting, through firing lines.
Yeah. When you open up your opponent and you see that they've got triple Forge Fiend, triple Predator Destructor, Abaddon, and the Dreadnought to make it all super spicy, you do poo yourself a little bit.
Yeah, this is a shooty armies map, but
it's also very easy to hide on and very easy to stage efficiently.
No, okay, right. This is something you need to understand. It's easy to stage, but it's impossible to hold the objective. So when you go onto that objective and you kill the chaff that somebody has left there, you then have to take a return fire before you can then go move on and tackle the thing that's just shot you from 48 inches away.
Yeah, my reckoning is
this is why you don't take combat armies, Toby, because you don't know how to. You don't see that.
No, I see it. And I do because obviously I've got to do it as well. I had to have I had the joy of a redemption.
How many points do your things cost to stick in there and just die?
As
a Space Marine player,
the stuff that was dying and trading in here. Oh goodness me. Term 1, it was only 85 points because I used some jump pack intercessors that obviously got picked up, and then it was Storm Speeders, Redemptors, Inceptors. So like between 130 to 210.
But as the game goes on, right, they're losing resources, and you're still trading with like efficient trade units. Don't get me wrong. There's other armies out there that do it better. Sisters would absolutely love because this is a great map. This is a great map for Sisters. Then there's other armies of that sort of ilk would do really well. If you've got a lot of points sunk into like big units, this is not a great map for you.
Yeah, they've got to really tank. They've got to really, really be tanky because there's just no way to, like, you can kind of hold an objective by being a little bit in the building.
Yeah, but you just get out OC'd quite easily because you can't get enough bases on that corner to really hold it with anything significant.
Exactly. And to be honest, that's how I managed, because my opponent had a shootier army than me. My opponent Ed, who we've actually now picked up as a crow, phenomenal guy. We had such a fun game. Never seen him roll so many 6s in his bloody life. He said that he genuinely felt sorry for me for the dice that he was rolling, which was quite funny. But he also didn't have as many scoring pieces, so I was able to deny primary. So I think if you're against a heavy shooting army, play it cagey. Actually, to be honest, against anything, I think you have to play it cagey because, again, it's search and destroy, isn't it?
Yeah. So this is a tough map, but again, we all learned a lot from this tournament. It was an amazing event. We had a great time, and we're all heading to the ITT. 30 of us. We're all going to be battling it out, and I mean, me and Toby, we've got loads of events coming up, but this is probably another one which is going to be up there as one of the best events we've been to. So
yeah,
bring on the ITT.
Well, that's the thing, because like as much as we say it will take some topping, but we've got the ITT and then Glasshammer coming up. And ITT, I'm so excited for. There's 30 of us going, and then Glasshammer,
10 so far, I
so
think, or maybe a few more.
yeah, and then there's all the big names, which should be really, really exciting. I'm sure the ITT will attract a lot of big names, but like, I've never met Lee and VSL. I'm really looking forward to that. Probably getting round one, no my luck. But I'm like,
I'll find it really entertaining if you do. But anyway,
I know.
let's move on, Toby. Let's get on to, because we're running out of time. We're gonna go through
Oh yeah,
the stuff that's relevant on the field manual. So
yeah.
so what is relevant on the field manual? So adaptive sororities. So it's really key.
Okay.
So you can see that from the red is the things that went up, the green is the things that went down. Okay, so just to give you a quick overview of what happened in this is anything that was indirect typically went up. Anything that was just kind of like overly weighted, so ridiculously strong for what it was, kind of went up. So the arcoflagellants don't look like much, and then all of us. But then you go into
4 out, feel no pain. 2 wins.
They become no joke, So you saw like cheap spam units like these Crusader models. They went up because people were just able to use them just to kind of chaff around, and no one really cared too much about them. And I think it's just worth noting that they did do some fine tweaking there, and I think for some things they got it really right. For others, they got it really wrong. So this is the Adeptus Custodes. Now the Codex got released officially this Saturday just gone, right, Toby? It was the Saturday just gone. We've had it for a while, and the team really wanted me to do a review on Adeptus Custodes. And I desperately wanted to do a review on the Adeptus Custodes, but I couldn't bring myself around to doing it because the way that they've written that book and the way that they've done it, it's very outdated. Now, when people get the book and they look at the points, they're like, "Wow, look at this," and then they go to then they see this and they're like, "Oh my God, we've had like all these massive reductions." The big point to make here is all of these reductions, apart from 5 different reductions, were all already had happened. We had that from the last. So Wardens were already 200 points for 4. Custodian Guard were already 180 points for 4. The Blade Champion, yes, went down 10 points. Great. The Alaris stayed the same. Shield Captain was still 140 points. So Trajan went down by 10 points. Not much really changed. Venerable Dreadnought went down by 10 points. So we went down some points in certain areas that didn't matter. But the way that the Codex has been done is a real sorry state. And I predict that we will be worse off than what we were when we had the 4-up against mortal wounds as our standard. I feel like we're probably going to be lower than that position.
Yeah. I mean, I think the book just, in its current state, before we've played games with it, before we've seen the pros really get their hands on it, I would say that entire book needs a rewrite. It's just like there's aspects of it that are really interesting, but on the core bits, I think it's been a real swing and a miss. I mean, Custodes are hard to balance. Like I'm not going to deny that, because they are either usually bonkers good or really poor. They've had a 64% win rate for the entire time since they had that change in the last manual. They have been, good to top tier throughout this section of the meta, but now they are just nowhere, and that's really disappointing, because they, as much as they were a gatekeeper to other combat armies, and they were a gatekeeper to other combat armies, like there's no denying it, but they were an interesting army to have. That 2-up, 4-up is an interesting dynamic to play with, especially when it's not Grey Knights doing all the movement nonsense. But we know that 2 up, 4 up isn't good enough at the moment because we've seen how Grey Knights had to have their points dropped and then had to adapt to play big mechs. So I think that codex needs a damn rewrite.
I think, look, we're not going to see any changes for at least 6 months. I don't think we'll see anything in the next data slate. I doubt we'll see. It could be next January that we get anything changed, because the way GW like to do things, they like to build up a data bank, and I'm not entirely sure that after 3 months they're going to change anything, unless we're rocking below 30%. And
so
there's just no one is taking them at events, and then they may have to do something, but I don't know if they will.
On that point, there was mention about Adeptus Mechanicus, which I think is the next one, because they did have some points drops, but in the article it mentioned how they were going to get a shot in the arm because they needed a boost with their rules. Now, yes, AdMech are not doing particularly well, but they have had multiple tournament wins. There is a version. It is not fun to play, and it's very expensive monetarily to do, but it's really good. That OC deny primary, and just score your secondaries. It's a solid. It's a really solid list, and there's some AdMech players that are managing to perform really well with it. However, Tyranids, they haven't won a tournament this slate. I haven't seen them performing at the top levels. They did get a 4-1 at Oxford, and they got a 4-1 and a 4-0-1 at Oxford. I'm not sure how, looking at the lists in all honesty. Like, kudos to the players, because clearly they piloted it phenomenally. But then Gargoyles went up.
Like, yeah, we'll get onto that. We'll stick to the AdMech for now, and then we'll move through at Tobes, because we're looking into the future. Look, the AdMech here, they had some decreases, right? I don't know AdMech very, very well, but I think I don't think they're overly meaningful, these decreases. I think like, the stuff that got decreased isn't necessarily the stuff that they were taking,
No.
So I don't think you're going to see much list changes. I don't think these things dropping all of a sudden is going to make a big difference.
I do think, as a rule of thumb in this MFM, they've decreased a lot of units that no matter how cheap they get, we still won't take them unless they are ridiculously cheap, like Terminators for Space Marines, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Eldari,
they got another nerf / buff.
This is probably their hardest hit, right?
Fugan went up to 130 points, which is a lot. Support
the MSU
went up to 135 points. But then Striking Scorpions did come down. Storm Guardians came down. Howling Banshees came down. Guardian Defenders came down. But Swooping Hawks went up. So, and Shining Spores went down as well. So they had some weird. This is weird. Eldari are in a bit of a weird place because the meta has shifted so much. They're still performing really well, but they're performing really well in, like, the shadows, if that makes sense. They're not taking the headlines at the minute, but they're still, considering this army, since it got released, has been nerfed how many times?
Every single slate. It's had at least one major hit every single slate.
It's still one of the top factions. I think it just shows how there was some equality issues in the rules writing.
I mean, how someone looked at that book when they first wrote the Eldari book and went, "Yeah, this is fair and balanced." I really don't know. I think Eldari are pretty nice now. Like, they're a good faction, especially when you look at the Yanari. But we'll see. We'll see how they look into the new meta.
So this was another subtle nerf to Custodes as well as Agent. The Calidus Assassin going up to 100 points and Lord Kyria Draxus going up to 85 points. That is wild. Kyria Draxus is still good at 85 points. You still take her because she's still good. Yeah. Inquisitorial Henchman went up to 50 points for 4 dudes. Like, what? It's because it was being used by everyone.
It's the same as the RBTs when they got nerfed. They got squad size nerfed instead.
Yeah.
But like, if there is that any Imperial faction can take this, then and it's small, it's cheap and holds objectives, it does tend to get nerfed. Like, it seems to be that they're going, right, the minimum unit cost that you can have in your Space Marine army is 50 points, done. Which I think is probably actually a good thing.
Astra Munitorum, they had an interesting one. Now we talked about this pre-stream. You're like, oh, they're irrelevant now. I'm like, yeah, okay, their indirect got nerfed, their Bulgarin got nerfed, but look how much got made cheaper. All the Lehman Russ got made cheaper. The Rough Riders got made cheaper. The Hydras got, well, the Hydras rub. No one cares about the Hydras. The Hellhound got made cheaper. The Tempestus Scions got made cheaper, and the Command School got cheaper, and the rest of it stayed the same.
Kassakin went up 20 points.
Oh, and the Medusa went up. So yeah, so there were some key things that went up, but all those Lehman Russ went down, and that is nice.
So Lehman Russ is going down. It's okay, but they're like, when you actually read their rules, they are so disappointing. Like, Lehman Russ Battle Tank, it's -1 AP.
Yeah.
What's it doing? Like, it doesn't. Meta, if it was a castigator gun, ignoring cover, beautiful.
You might as well all -1. You might as well just take out of the game, because most people have got cover. Unless you can. Yeah, it's just not. Yeah.
It's ignore -1, ignore cover. Great, and we saw that with Grey Knights. As soon as they added ignore cover to one of their guns, I can't remember, I think it was the Psy Cannon, it suddenly got good. When they did that with, well, the Castigators are the best example, because excuse me, sorry, they are the best example of this, because it's the same cannon as a Lehman Russ on a lighter chassis, but it sees triple play in Sisters because it ignores cover, so it can actually do that damage. But yeah, it's just, those Lehman Russes are just not where they need to be, and Kassakin being nerfed is brutal. I think maybe we'll start seeing some Tempestus lists. That's what I'm hoping. But
we'll see.
I think Guard are back to where they were before, sort of those big indirect lists were really taking.
We'll move on because we're running out of time. But we're going to go on to the Black Templars. They took a pretty targeted nerf. Their tanks got made more expensive because apparently a Black Templar army, not having, tanks. I thought that was their staple. Lancers, Reapers, Valiant. That's a Templars army, right?
Very much so. I mean, they obviously, Templars exclusively play gladiator chassis, and that's what they're known for in the books, right? Nothing to do with large squads of infantry. Definitely not the case. I think this is a good change, though.
Yeah, agreed.
Because I thought that Space Marines might get it rough in this one and see loads of points increases, but it was just the Black Templars, which is good.
Templars and Blood Angels. Blood Angels.
Oh yeah.
They got some buffs, but they got some nerfs. I think Blood Angels balance out.
It's weird because Blood Angels weren't like a major predator. Sure, the list that was good was 30 Jump Out Death Company with Power Fists. It wasn't right that that's the only way that you could, because you weren't playing Blood Angels, you were playing Death Company.
Yeah.
But I think this balance has put Blood Angels back to being an irrelevant faction, which I think is rough.
Good. Demons.
Nothing.
Lovely. Chaos Knights.
Nothing.
Which shocks me because their big knights need a change. Anyway. Chaos Space Marines. Cheap.
Vindicators are 175 points now. Yay.
Like, what the hell is this? But
make Ironstorm Chaos Space Marines. Play Chaos Space Marines like they're Ironstorm, you will do well.
Pretty much. This whatever. It's not
like, stop taking infantry. Just stop doing it. put your infantry in the bin and play more tanks, and
So
you will be fine.
Dark Angels got made cheaper, Toby.
Dark Angels, it was
They
irrelevant.
they still
But
suck.
yeah, it was the exact conversation that we all had. It was literally like, I don't care how much cheaper a Terminator squad gets. I'm still not bringing Terminators. They're just rubbish. And it's the same with the Lion. Like the Lion is useless. Like he could be cheaper than that, and he still wouldn't even get a look in.
300 points for what he does is expensive.
Compare that to the Nightbringer. It's just stupid. The nerfed Nightbringer, it doesn't make sense.
This is rough. Death Guard.
Death Guard, they dodged a nerf to the Predator, which is really good, and I think Death Guard are actually in a really good spot.
We're going to see a big change in the meta, big swing. This was rough as well.
Yeah, Deathwatch are weird. I can't remember if they're on the Codex like rundown yet, but
rough. They're gonna end up going in with Agents of Imperium. I think that's what we can expect, and that would be really cool.
Yeah.
But this is rough. Drakari.
No change.
No change. Gene Stealer Colts.
Irrelevant. So no change.
No major change. They're pretty poor at the minute. They're having a real rough time.
Yeah.
Grey Knight, Nemesis Dread Knight got buffed. Then so it was poor, got mega buff, then has just been nerfed again. I don't know how many points it went up by. I don't know if it's a lot. Was it like 15 points? Something like that?
I'm not sure, but it's now appropriately pointed.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Like the what it could do for the amount of points it was obscene. And now it's probably in a better space. And plus, because they've made Purgation Squad, Purifier Squad, Strike Squads, Intercept Squads, they're all cheaper. I think that's a big bonus for Grey Knights, because those squads were too expensive for what they did, and now they're probably a little bit on the pricey side still, but I think they're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean it's difficult when you're paying for a 2-up, 4-up, but your damage output is the problem.
Yeah. Their damage output is pretty rough. Imperial Knights. Nothing. I don't know what it is. GW have got something against Knights armies at the minute.
They're just hard to balance, so I think they've just gone okay.
Leagues of Votan. They've literally just made their Hearthkid warriors cheaper.
Yeah, that's fine. Votan seem balanced. They seem good, but they don't seem impressive. So I like that.
They're not breaking the game. Not like they were in 9th. So that's fine. Necrons, baby. So
yeah, big changes here.
Necron took some nerf, and it affected more the Hypercrypt builds than the Canoptic Court builds.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think all of the Canoptic Court units went up.
Yeah, but they haven't got worse. Like the whole army, Canoptic Court still functions perfectly with. It's still the best attachment in the game. With
I
these
don't know.
nerfs.
I think
absolutely
they've lost.
Toby. There's no way you can deny that one.
Yeah, no, I think you can, because Immortals and
I think Toby's gone. Toby's gone, people. We don't have to hear him try and prove me wrong. I think basically the issue here with this list was that Wraith stayed at 6-man units. Wraith staying at 6-man units, being able to have the ability that they can get the feel no pain, is just rough. And
what on earth just happened there?
I didn't know. You gave everyone a reprieve, and it was it's a very, very, very strange that didn't get changed. Monolith going up in points, I think, was appropriate. All Guitars going up in points, I think, is appropriate, because they were really good for their points. And Necrons, I still think, are going to be the best army in the game until we get to Orcs.
I think they're going to be really good. I think they're going to be really good, and I think it's they've reined them in for sure. I want to know exactly how many points Josh Roberts' list went up.
It went up like 150 points.
Okay, that's quite major. That's like 2-3 units. Eek.
But I think he could play around with that. Like we
Oh yeah, it's still good. He didn't nerf. I think this is the big difference between ninth and 10th. When things got nerfed in ninth, they got nerfed into the dirt, so they were never in the format again. Like if you, like, I'm going to say this from a Dark Angels perspective, but you could say this for Drakari, you could say this for Admech. When Dark Angels Inner Circle got nerfed, you then never saw another Inner Circle unit ever. Because they sucked. Orcs is irrelevant because it's all changing anyway.
Well, orcs is. We don't know how they're going to perform. We don't really know what this means yet.
Yeah.
But what we do know is that the Codex is very good.
Yeah, Codex is really solid. It depends how many units they can fit in their armies. And Double War is
a thing. I guarantee you that one of the big GTs in the next 3 months will be won by an orc player.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Like, there's so many people switching over to orcs. I will laugh if then suddenly the points come out and they're atrocious. It will be really funny if that happens. But at the moment, I think most people are battening down the hatches for an orc meta or are buying an orc army.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Space Marine changes wasn't really major, like you said.
Well, the only thing was the Eliminators, so the shithousery between an Impulsor and the Eliminators
went up,
which is good. Yeah, that went up. I don't think it's worth it anymore. It's a very expensive thing to do. Space Wolves, meh. Tau,
we don't really know what's going on with Tau until their Codex is finally released. Thousand Suns got mega shot in the arm. What the hell?
They got some boons. So again, our Terminator is going to be worth it. Probably not still, but there's arguments for it. They only took a small nerf. The small nerf is quite bad for them because they were all taking that enhancement as an auto include. I'm surprised Magnus did not go up in points because he is in every single Thousand Suns list without fail.
He is also 440 points. Which is,
I know, but
I feel like Games Workshop are scared to make that any higher.
It's tough, isn't it? Because there's such a tiny range. It's the same with World Eaters. If you poo on Angron, or if you poo on Magnus, the whole army loses its appeal.
Yeah, I think
I've already moaned about NIDs.
But we've looked at NIDs and they did get quite a lot of decreases across. And I don't know how much that's going to change them. I mean,
they did.
I think if you
what units got major decreases here? Let's see if that's any good.
I mean, Lictor, meh. Hiveguard, meh. Zone Thropes. No, Thropes got a bit of a decrease. They're pretty good.
Yeah, but the problem is they're 3 wounds with a 4-up. Like, they do just die to a stiff breeze.
This is true. The Swarm Lord went down.
That's good. That's definitely good.
That is good. Yeah, Swarm Lords are always strong.
Yeah.
Gargoyles went up though, which is just troll worthy. That's just funny.
Stupid. Like, I know they're great, and I know that their players a bit feels bad, but if you wanted to like ruin a turn of players' day, just remind them that their gargoyles are more expensive now.
So World Eaters, the last one we're going to look at, and this is one that I think is really relevant. This army, I think, are going to love life.
It's so interesting, I think, because you look at that and you go, okay, Zerkers are back on the menu, but then you look at what one of their most natural predators is, which is orcs, and in its current state, I think that's actually one of the because they have to rely on the early turns to deal lots and lots of damage. Orcs just go double war for a turn. I've got an invulnerable save against everything you're doing, and my damage output beats your damage output.
I think what will be the telling thing here will be how much people have of each army. A lot of people have a lot of World Eaters. Not many big orc players out there yet.
Well, this is the thing, and if you look into a lot of circles, I know we're not doing it as Black Crow, but if you look into a lot of other circles and a lot of other conversations that I'm having, people are going, yeah, I'm switching to orcs. So Eldari players a lot of them moved to Eldari because they were chasing the meta, and now a lot of them are moving to orcs. I think that's quite telling.
Yeah. Well, I told you right from the very beginning. I said to you, Orc's going to be the new big bad, and you were like, "Oh, I don't know." And now we're like, Orc's going to be the new big bad.
Yeah, I think they're going to be a meta adjuster. They're going to define the meta for maybe a month and a half, I'll say, and then people will work out how to deal with them.
Yeah, we just got to wait and see what happens.
It's the same way. It will. This is the thing, because there were so many Necrons at Oxford. Not a single Necron player went 5-0.
No, which I found quite strange. But
well, this is it. The highest.
We'll get on to. Oh. Toby's internet is failing him tonight, people, and I'm very sorry.
No, it's all right. I'm still here. I just stopped talking.
He's still here. He's back. He's back. He's back. So we're gonna move on. We're gonna wrap up. So obviously we've done a bit of an in-depth review into the GT, but we need to get back into one of the fun things we're doing, which is our giveaway. In a week's time, myself, Toby, and Josh will be going live for roughly 20 minutes, and we are going to announce live on stream who has won our giveaway. Now, currently, Toby, how many entrants have we got?
130.
So there's 130 entrants into the Terrain Forge giveaway.
130 individuals, lots of them with multiple entries.
Okay. 130 individuals. Now, if you want to have an opportunity to do this, all you need to do is go, and Toby will do another repost of all of this around our socials, is like this post, share this post, follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube. By doing any of those things, gets you a automatic entry. Now, if you do all of those things, you get loads of entries. So I suggest you do it, because that terrain set there is no joke. It's a gorgeous set of terrain. It covers the board really well, and it's made beautifully. I love it. Toby has played on the set that we have here a few times. It just covers everything you need from a well balanced board.
Yeah, it lets you practice your UKTC, which I think is particularly important at the moment, because we are going into a new meta. The more reps that you can get on that terrain, the better.
Yeah, and this kind of leads us nicely into what we're going to talk about next. So we are sponsored very kindly by Terrain Forge, and if you see in our description below and you enter the BCG5, you get 5% off whatever Terrain Forge is selling. There is custom made terrain to your specification. You want WTC terrain, they'll get you WTC terrain. You want UKTC style terrain, they'll make you UKTC style terrain. Fantastic terrain company. They're now bringing out new mats, which have all the deployment zones built in for you, which we'll be advertising on here very shortly. We are also sponsored by Glasshammer Gaming. People were probably thinking, oh, Glasshammer, isn't that Manny? Yes. Manny and Dan, their company up in Telford, is a fantastic online shop and gaming centre. If you go on their online store, you get 20% off. If you put in Black Crow into your code, you get an additional 5% off. So that means you get a whole 25% off your plastic toys. And I 100% say go and do that, because that's probably the cheapest Warhammer you're going to get anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I picked up a tank for like 36 quid. Like that's crazy cheap to me.
Considering just how expensive things are nowadays.
Yeah.
If you go over £90, you get your postal is free, and they're doing amazing things. Their tournament is coming up really soon. Already 150 tickets are gone, so over halfway sold for them. They're going for the 300 person mark. We implore that if you want to go for it, also if you want to buy a ticket for them, use the 5% off Black Crow code. It gets you 5% off the ticket value as well.
And if you see me there, buy me a pint, because it's my birthday.
Yeah, no one cares, Toby. Anyway, we have been Arron and Toby from Black Crow. This is the Black Crow Gaming Warhammer 40,000 podcast, or the Black Crow Gaming podcast. Meta Monday is gone. Our soft relaunch is back. We're just being the Black Crow Gaming podcast because sometimes we don't want to talk about the meta. Sometimes we want to have people like Peachy on. Or if you look into the future, who have we got on next week, Toby?
We have got, so it's going to be a recorded rather than a live, but we have Quipster Nerd coming down. Alex Paternot, who is a lovely bloke and actually kind of got me into the, not directly, but because of the content he produced, got me into the hobby.
And we're also, 2 days after that, or the day after that, we're recording a video with Skari, the Drakari player from Canada. We're doing a special recording with him. And then we have other big guests lined up for you guys in the future. And can't wait to see you all. Much love. Take care.
Sit the ICT!